Well, Jay, how's everybody feeling today? Feeling good? Shabastik ni Dishnakaswin, Moose Cree First Nation ni Duchin, Musco ni Dotem. My name is Shabastik. I'm a proud member of the Moose Cree First Nation and also the Bear Clan. I'm very, very honored to be asked to be your MC today for this event. Normally, I'm a different kind of an MC. I'm a rapper, and I've actually performed at a lot of these kind of conferences and presented as well and spoke, but to be the MC for this is a great, great honor for me. I do a tour called the Land Bass Tour, bass as in BASS with music, you know. So I travel a lot, and the big thing behind my music since I started, and I've been doing this for quite a while, has been sharing our teachings, the beautiful side of our culture, the importance of being on the land and the things we learn out there. It's not just about being educated and learning how to do these things, but what we learn on the land teaches us how to be good human beings, how to be good people, how to really not just have respect and love for the animals, but to really, you know, when you go through these certain experiences on the land, it really changes you and makes you see things differently, makes you stronger, makes you more brave, you know, and it just makes you a better human being. And plus the connection between, you know, for me to be able to go moose hunting, to be in a boat with my father and my grandfather for a week and a half, just the three of us, you know, the connection, the bonding that happens out there. So many important things. So very, very honored to be asked to be a part of this event. Huge honor. Now, I have a lot of stories. If I get time throughout the day, if there's any time to kill, I'll be happy to share some of my personal stories as well with you. If that happens, that usually happens. But to start, as usual, we're gonna start with an opening prayer. So I'm gonna introduce our elder, Lucy Kakigamic. Lucy is a Kiwewin First Nation band member, but is currently living in Thunder Bay with her family. She has a BA, a BED from Lakehead University, and counseling from Providence Institute. She's been working as a well-being support worker for Kiwetanuk, Okinawanak Student Support Services at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School for the last 11 years. Her work involved meeting with students individually on mental, emotional, or well-being issues while they attend high school in Thunder Bay or Sioux Lookout. Lucy enjoys supporting students and encouraging them in their educational goals. She also worked as a part-time elder with DFC and their elders program. She enjoyed visiting with the students and being available to make tea and bannock for them when they come to the elders room. Today, her work focuses on making herself available to support in an elder capacity for meeting with her tribal council, Kobe, and with NAN. She feels that this new role has opened more opportunities to be aware of what is happening with organizations. But please give a warm welcome to Lucy Kakigemic.
Before.
Yes, we have.
Come and sing a deep sea.
Yes, I did.
Thanks for the introduction. Good morning. Bonjour. Wajib. Wajim nawa. Nakum genin. Wagapich minakishkak. Kawabadamak. Agime mina wanskayak. We're talking about a land base. I guess that includes the language. We've got again is sticky is a way about storing getting a gijikunamag wapan where is my language change. I want to say welcome everybody and want to acknowledge our deputy Bobby. Boy, you get around. I seen you yesterday at Sioux Lookout somewhere. Got a nice jacket on. Okay, we were here, my daughter and I were here celebrating with our graduate students from Kobe, and boy, did we have a treat. They had the dancers here, and that brought me a lot of memories with those dancers because my late husband, Gois Kakigamic, was a deputy. He used to invite these dancers when he had Embrace Life conference, and that kind of hit the heart, kind of got a bit emotional there, but it was a real treat for these dancers. And it was good to see all of my former students too, those that are graduated that I worked with. I was so happy to see them, to all these students and also I was really happy to see my friends from Deer Lake. Du tema que at kusagan yunok. Jabskap mas pan do vijogan. Magi do knamagiban a few years in Deer Lake at kusagan, so we knew a lot of our friends. He's got a lot of relatives there and cousins, so that was really, really good to see all of them. Okay, yes, I welcome everybody already. And I look forward for this 2-day. It looks pretty full. And we are all here to participate and to share our knowledge and our wisdom. So with that, I will open up in prayer. Shamandogag Swasan, Kanakumugumina Hue. Wegai Sik Shamash Nanok. If I send me an Kshama do Shawendaman, Wegamau cheat Nanok. Wenaga Uchkuni Heg Gomina Knomaganak, Egomina Ganiganskamuat, Wenan Kun. Mishbak send me an, the guitar and the moon chew, Pagit Naman Egomina Stamagion. Kakanoju Shawen Matumau Yegai. Gnakumgagisganem Shiak Hogania Pishidipkag, Miniaone Minshiak, Gnakumgo. O God, our Father, our Creator, we acknowledge you this morning for this beautiful day. It's a gift from you, Lord, for this very breath we have that we breathe upon. It's a gift for you. And we just ask you bless this gathering, this land-based gathering, and all the knowledge and wisdom that will be shared. I pray you bless it, Father, and you bless each one here. We thank you. We pray, God, that you give us renewed strength, renewed mind and body today. In Jesus, we Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lucy. So our next speaker needs no introduction. I think we all know who Bobby Narcisse is. Please put your hands together for Bobby Narcisse. He's going to share some words. Our Deputy Grand Chief.
All right, thank you very much. Wojokenwiak, Nina Bobby Narcisse, Disney Kaz, Airland Dunji. Wingemin down Namanaka Biang, good morning, everyone. My name is Bobby Narcisse. I'm your Deputy Grand Chief for Anishinaabe Nation. It's my very distinct honor and pleasure to be here with you all today. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation. And also I'd like to thank Lucy for being here, to opening us up in a good way. It's always great to have Lucy here at many of our gatherings throughout the year. As Deputy Grand Chief, I am, my portfolio is education, child and family services, youth and sports. And so I'm very fortunate to really help advocate for initiatives such as this, for land-based healing, land-based education, how as First Nations communities and stakeholders and partners that we have this opportunity, this ongoing goal and aspiration to develop an education system that is reflective of our culture, of our languages, of our distinct nature within many of our communities across Anishinaabe Nation territory. And seeing that we have a good crowd here today, a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience that we're bringing together to look at how best we can incorporate land-based education, healing, and languages, throughout our education systems. I see many friends here and family that are here today that bring, like I said, their wealth of knowledge. I just want to say, like, too, like, growing up, like I said, I was from Maryland, but I grew up in Thunder Bay, so I was like an urban kid myself, and so we go back and forth to Maryland and Thunder Bay. And I found that when I was in Thunder Bay, I was missing a lot of that culture. I was missing a lot of that land-based education that came from my grandparents and my uncles and my extended family. So I kind of missed that a bit. But I went to high school in Geraldton, Geraldton Composite High School, and they have this program called Outers. And so in grade 10, I joined Outers because they do a lot of, like, canoeing, wilderness survival, winter camping and whatnot. So I remember the teacher who was in charge of it said, "Oh yeah, that's great. We don't have too many First Nation students come to Outers or whatever, or come to this wilderness training program." Because, "Oh yeah, sure. Well, I want to be out in the land and help with." Give out my knowledge and teachings and whatnot. So meanwhile, I had no clue what was going on. And, so yeah, you're in grade 10. So we have this cop's son. He's never been out. He's from down south. And we thought, I will pair him with you in a canoe. And since you must be, right into the land, and you must probably was born in a canoe. So yeah, we'll let you be in charge of this kid. So anyways, not even like 12 yards from shore. Of course, there's white caps on the lake, and it was like a couple of minutes already. We knew we were in trouble. We're circling around, and so this big wave just overtook us, and the canoe just tipped over and whatnot. So, and then I remember one of our First Nations counselors that was there was asking me, like, "James, you're from Maryland. What kind of Indian are you?" and stuff. And so, and it didn't end there. So while we were canoeing to our various destinations and whatnot, it was decided that this next day we were going to be portaging, and so we'll be having lunch on the trail. So the night before, I was put in charge of the cooking duties along with these two other students. They were like a little bit older in grade 12. So it was decided that we're going to cook some fried bread or some bannock, so we could have some bannock that night in our portaging the next day. So I figured, oh geez, I never made bannock at all and stuff. So my grandmother always did it. So it's not that hard. How hard could it be? So anyways, I started putting the water and the flour and magic baking powder and everything. And, all the other cooks had theirs nice and fluffy and whatnot, and they put in these bags. And so I was looking at mine, and mine were turning into like hockey pucks, and some of them were burning and everything. And so, geez, I can't have a strike 2 at this already. So when everybody was asleep, sorry to say, I grabbed my bag of bannock and I switched it with with the other person's, and not my brightest not my brightest day. But so the next day we're out on the trail, we're having lunch, and everybody's saying, "Oh yes, it's so great that we have Bobby on our team of First Nations. Look at his fluffy bannock and everything." And everybody on the other side was, "Oh, look at these hockey pucks, and next time we want Bobby on our team," and whatever. So that's the thing. Like, even it was those opportunities to learn, the opportunities to learn how, and it's never too late, So I went on to be a canoe instructor as well. I worked at Dennis Franklin Camardi High School as a recreation director. I have a couple of my students that are right there. And we took them on various excursions out in the wilderness. And so I was able to pass on what I learned. But like I said, we continue to learn these things. And especially with my time at Dennis Franklin Camardi High School, I knew that many of our students came from our northern communities for 9 months of the year. They had to leave many of their communities to pursue their education. And what better is to really provide or create a curriculum, a program that was more reflective of their needs from back home. And that is also really including the land-based healing and land-based education. And that was an integral part of developing a lot of the programs at Dennis Franklin Comarty High School. And I think this week we're going to hear a lot of very interesting ideas, a lot of best practices on land-based education and land-based learning that we want to come together. I wish I want to be here next couple of days. I'll be in and out. However, as you know, Anishinaabe Nation is a advocacy organization. So from here, I'm heading to ISK to work with Minister Hadju and her deputy ministers as well, to really push and advocate for needs-based resourcing within our communities, within our education systems. It's our role as your deputy grand chief and also my staff that are here as well, to really help advocate for adequate resourcing for these type of land-based education and land-based healing. You notice the program of Choose Life. You know, Choose Life is specific only to Anishinaabe Nation, and it's basically based in many of our First Nation communities. Many of our tribal councils also host the Choose Life program, where you could also have partnerships and integrate your education systems with that program that is resource at needs based as well. I know you also have your family well-being workers as well. I know many of our work in terms of child and family services, we have secured prevention dollars that go straight to the First Nation communities and various organizations as well. So there is a lot of resources that are out there that we could all tap into, especially with our negotiations this morning. We've entitled it the Education Reset, where we want to reset high-level negotiations with decision makers at Indigenous Services Canada to ensure that we have a NAN specific process, because as you know, $1 in Thunder Bay is different than $1 in Attawapiskat or Aroland. So why are we continued to be funded the same way or discriminated against, or also the fact that we have to also jump through these red tape to design a program or education systems that is more reflective of our communities? Because many times our communities, as you know, face unique challenges. So in turn, we have unique solutions that come from our communities. And that's what I'm looking forward to really hearing and reading about after these next 2 days. Like I said, this is an opportunity for us to really gain some experience and have some fun as well, and looking at ways to really encourage land-based learning, land-based education within many of our systems as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to your MC. I know he's a rapper and everything, so maybe he'll do some rapping for us the next couple of days or so. So it's good to have him here. And Chimigwaj, and I wish you guys the next 2 days great educational experience for you all. So Miigwech.
All right, thank you so much, Bobby. I couldn't help you with the Bannock stuff, but for the wave thing, the tip in the boat, a little tip, and you got the caps like that, you got to hit the waves dead on. You hit them sideways, that's when the rolling happens. You know, and you pass a boat you pass a boat in the river and the waves come, you got to turn into the waves. Actually, just a little tip. The land can be a very scary place if you don't know these things, you know. Yeah, the paddling too. Well, that's a whole different thing, I guess. If it's, yeah, I'm talking about when you got the motor, I guess a paddle, but still, yeah, I remember as a kid going through that and be like, Dad, why are you hitting the waves dead on? Like and then he explained, this is why, because otherwise you can roll the boat. And if you don't know that, that's the opposite thing you would think, right? Like it's a big wave, but don't hit it dead on. But that's what you have to do in that situation. So we're gonna review the agenda now. Do some housekeeping notes, and the first on that list is to review the agenda. And I was just informed that there is a mistake on day 2 of the agenda. And I've already lost where that is. But that's for tomorrow, so we can address that again tomorrow. So our first speaker for the agenda is going to be Dr. Sean Lessard. And in this presentation, Dr. Sean Lessard will share his experience alongside youth in his community of Montreal Lake Cree Nation as they develop experiences on the land in an effort to become more rooted in their identities. At 10:45 to 11, that's going to be next at 9:45. At 10:45 to 11, we're going to do a health break. And then at 11 o'clock, we're going to have a land-based healing in an urban setting by David Michael Thompson. And David has been working, I believe, for 5 years at a DFC and Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School is an urban private First Nations school located in Thunder Bay. The school's mission includes the desire of parents and elders to have students develop a strong sense of identity and the distinct languages, culture, and traditions of the Anishinaabe. Since opening in 2000, there have been several tragic student deaths that have resulted in an inquest. As part of the healing process, the school now includes land-based education as an extensive elders program. Land-based education strengthens intergenerational Anishinaabe tribal knowledge and cultural pride in students. Combined mainstream and Anishinaabe educational approaches contribute to positive identity, increased self-esteem, and higher retention rates. So that'll be at 10 to 12. At 12 o'clock, we're going to do a lunch break from 12 to 1. Right after lunch, we're going to be doing paddle making with George Sackney. George Sackney's presentation has been a highlight to many school students this spring. Now George is bringing his presentation to you. He'll be sharing his knowledge and expertise on 6 different types of trees and their purposes and use. So after that, at 2 o'clock, we're going to be doing an energizer. I'm not sure exactly what's happening there, but I'm sure it's going to be fun and get you guys all up and moving around, get the blood flowing. And then at 3 o'clock to 3:15, we're going to be doing a health break. 3:15 to 3:45, Charlotte Nekoway and Corinne Bandon. Now, if you have to forgive me, I'm from Moose Cree territory. Crees, a lot of these Ojibwe names I have trouble with. So if I mess up any names or words today, please forgive me and correct me afterwards. I'd like to learn the correct pronunciation. But Charlotte and Corinne will share how to harvest and make kinnikinnick. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that. Traditional, not sure about this word either. Asema. Anybody else? Anybody know that word? Okay. From 3 types of willow. They will also share some of their cultural and traditional teachings and activities that they do with students. Participants will have the opportunity to make kinnikinnick and a medicine pouch, and all participants are welcome. That's going to be awesome. So that'll be at the end of that, we're going to do a recap of the day. And I'll go over the highlights. There's also going to be some draws now. This is a hybrid event, so we are going to have some people attending online. We have crafter booths out in the lobby, so please check those out. A lot of cool stuff out there. And there's a reference handbook as a guide. Also, our elder Lucy will be available for if anybody wants to just to speak with her for guidance or support. If anything comes up today you want to talk to her about, she'll be available for that. There's also ballots, so fill out the ballots for prizes, which are available outside the Kaministiquia. You only need 1 ballot to fill out, and we're going to be giving away 4 hard copy books of Storyteller's Sky. At the end of each day, we're going to be giving away 4 of those books. So make sure you fill out a ballot. You must be present to win. And the conference coordinators available outside the chemist they're available outside the room here for assistance if anybody needs help with anything. So we have 15 minutes. We have 50 minutes here until David Thompson comes up. I was talking earlier about how the land changes you in so many different ways, so many good ways. You go through these really great experiences, like to get your first moose, the pride that comes with that, the feeling. Like I remember being a kid and Mike Oakham didn't speak a word of English, so I never really got to even have a conversation, like an actual, verbal conversation with her. But I spent so much time over there with her. I wasn't a big pike. I loved to fish for pike, but I didn't like eating pike. Too much bones, but she loved pike. It was like her favorite thing to eat. So every time I caught one, I'd be all excited to go take it to her, and she'd always be just laughing and so giggly, and she gave me these kisses, and it's such an awesome relationship that we had. And those moments of pride really builds you up and make you proud to be a human, proud to be Native. But there's also things you go through on the land that are really heartbreaking, that make you that change you in different ways. Like to accidentally kill a cow moose, you know, and she's got babies, and you got to take those babies out and experience that and go through that ceremony, how heartbreaking that can be, and how that just it makes you look at the animals different, makes you like know, like I was always told to be careful not to hit the cows, but now I know how that feels, you know. I'm gonna be really careful that time. You have that extra respect for that cow and those babies now because you had to go through that experience with them, you know. There's so many things that could happen that really make you a better human being. And courage, you know, like I said, I have a friend named Red Cloud, this guy who grew up in Hawthorne, California, right between Compton and Inglewood, one of the toughest, to me, scariest kind of places to go. But this guy, we were touring one time and I stopped on the side of the highway between Hearst and Long Lac, or you know, some really random spot. And I turned off the vehicle, rolled down the windows and turned off the vehicle. And this is along the highway. And he looks at me like right away, he's scared. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, he's like, what if it doesn't start back up? I'm like, what do you mean? What if it doesn't start? Of course it's going to start back up. But he's just freaking out. Like, what if we get stuck out here? We're like, we're on a highway. Cars could come. Someone can come by. We're really not out on the line. But it's so foreign to him. So I asked him, I said, how much would I have to pay you to, if I give you a tent right now, a nice little nylon tent, how much would I have to pay you to go just 1 kilometer back in the bush there, set up a camp and spend the night? And he looked at me, he's like, $1 million, man. And I was just laughing, like, really, like $1 million. I would do it for the bet, you know, just like, I bet you can't, or just, you know, for a chance that maybe I'll see a moose or see something, you know, like, but for him, because he didn't have that life experience, it's like a scary place, you know. People watch the movie Blair Witch Project and stuff like that, and they just think, oh, the bush, it's horrifying, you know, and it is a scary place. It is something you really have to respect. The rivers are dangerous. Like it is, that's when you get out there too, after being on the land for a week, you realize how harsh this world is, you know, and how just surviving is, you know, we forget about that because we have so many things that make our lives so easy, you know, like, and after being in the bush for a couple of weeks, having a warm shower, the feeling of a warm, clean shower is nothing like that feeling. Like you appreciate that stuff so much. Being able to go to the washroom in a nice warm washroom and sit there, and instead of, you know, finding a spot in the bush to squat kind of thing, you know, you appreciate all these things we have. And I think it's so important that we have that balance back and forth, spend the time on that. We need that balance. And for myself as a youth growing up, that balance was there. Every season there's something, you know, spring, fall, it was always a balance. Like it's hunting season, and it's not, then we're chilling, then, you know. But as I got older and moving around so much, living in Thunder Bay and touring with the work I do, the balance for myself has been off. Like I talk about the land, I think about it so much, but I don't get out there as much as I need to, you know. And it's expensive too. It's hard to do. And we really need to respect as educators too. You got to, when a student or someone says that they have to get up on the land because it's that time of year to do something, we really have to respect that. Like it's not like, oh, they're missing school. Like as if, no, school is not more important than April 17th to April 30th. You know, that certain time of year when the geese are passing through, like our hunters, we need to be out there, and you have to really respect that. And as our hunters too, like our hunters in our communities at that time of year, they feel important. You know, you feel like your family's all excited when you come home. How many geese did you get? Because you're going to spread it out, you know. I was on the train the other day. I just have to say this, I thought it was so funny. There's girls sitting behind me. I was just kind of overhearing them talk the whole train ride. And then at the end of the train ride, this guy came walking back, and he came from the car, the restaurant car. You know, he had some courage in him, and he starts talking to the girls. He's kind of hitting on these girls, but how he hitting on, he's like, oh yeah, just came back from camp, got 58 geese, you know. And they're like, oh yeah, because he knows this is what, sorry, I keep hitting the mic, but he knows this is cool. This is what our women like, you know, and what's important. And just to hear that little interaction, I almost started laughing. It's like, I wish I was recording, you know, it was so cool. But you know, and the hard work ethic. I remember going to spring camp. The one year we had to go to our camp, the camp we hunt at. Did I do that? Okay. I'm like, what's that sound? Did I do something to the mic? But the one year we were going to go, it's 45 miles west of Moosonee, and we get dropped off by a bush plane. We've always had a plan to try to make a trail all the way out there, but we tried to do it a couple of times in the wintertime. It's just too hard to get through the swamp. And we used to hunt along the river. but the river, we got flooded out a couple times. And that's a scary thing to be like, I was a little kid, middle of the night, my dad waking us up, putting everything up in the top bunks and hearing the ice, just the noise of the ice, looking out of the flashlight and seeing the ice about 6 feet over the bank going by, knowing it could come pouring in at any minute, you know? So those experiences make you strong and tough. But because of that, we decided to start hunting out in the swamp. And the 1 year, we hadn't hunted there for a while. We had a bunch of lumber. We figured the camp was going to be in rough shape. So we had a bunch of plywood we were going to bring to fix up the camp. But it ended up, the pilot was like, no, this is too much weight. He's like, we can't take all this. So we decided just to hope that it was going to be okay. So we get dropped off there at the camp, and our camp was just, you couldn't even see it. It was all collapsed. The look in the pilot's face, you could tell he's like, oh, he felt bad just leaving us there, you know, 45 miles, middle of nowhere with no wood and then just no camp. So that whole day was spent just working, digging out the camp and whatever, got it all set up. A lot of trips we got really hard, but after you go through all that work, and then that's hunting, you know, like, and then you get to enjoy sitting in the blind. You know, everything is out there, is work. But, you know, and as a kid growing up, I didn't look at it that way. It was just like, that's part of the hunt. We go out there and the first day is always work, got to get wood. I remember hearing geese and being all excited to get to the blind, but it's like, no, first we got to get the camp set up. We got to get a bunch of spruce boughs. We got to get wood cut for tonight, you know, and it's just rushing around helping as a young little boy, just working, helping my dad. And that really ingrained that hard work ethic in me, you know. And now in life, not in other things, I just learned that lesson to enjoy life. You got to put in the work. And that's something that is missing when our youth aren't taken out on the land. You know, they're not, and a lot of our youth in our communities, they don't, you know, when your parents go off to work, you don't see what's being done to put food on the table. You don't really learn that lesson of you got to work hard, you know. But when you take our kids out there in the land, it really gets ingrained in them. And there's so many things that are important. Why this land-based education is so important. It just makes us better people. It connects us to our culture. You know, it's one thing to be proud to be Native because you're Native. It's another thing to be proud because I have like traditional knowledge, you know, that I can share, that I'm going to pass on to my kids. And it's so vital to us, you know, as a people. It's our culture. This is our culture. This is who we are. And it's not just that, it's even more, because it's our health, our physical health, our life, like being healthy and happy people. Like, we need to keep eating the food we get from the land is so healthy compared to what we're getting from the stores. I'm a diabetic myself. I just spent a week out in the land. I just got back in town yesterday. Went up way up one of the rivers, up the Moose River, the Quatabuegan. And you know, like, I just feel the whole time I was out there, I kept bottoming out. My sugars kept getting too low, and that really never happens for me, you know. And it was just because of the way I was living, being really active all day, eating better food, you know. It's so important. Like, to eat a walleye right from the river compared to one of the fish you buy in the store, it's not even the same thing. Like, for what's in that meat and what it does for your body, what it does for who you are, how you feel after just eating traditional food, it's so important. For so many different reasons. So I don't know if we want to get Dr. Sean Lessard to start a bit early. Sean, would you like to start? All right, we'll do that. So I'm going to read Sean's bio. Dr. Sean Lessard is from Montreal Lake Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory. He is an award-winning writer, international speaker, and researcher in the field of Indigenous education. Sean is a adjunct professor at the University of Regina and faculty member at the University of Alberta. Sean has been awarded the Pat Clifford Emerging Researcher Award by the Canadian Association for Teacher Educators, as well as the American Educational Research Association's Emerging Scholar Award. His work focuses on Indigenous youth empowerment and leadership, including developing his Indigenous Youth Bursary and Wellness Program that has contributed to more than 300 bikes and 1,000 pairs of running shoes for students this school year. Wow. All right, so please put your hands together. Give a warm welcome to Dr. Sean Lessard.
Yeah, I gotta see if this is gonna be a little bit of a. Yeah, I was wondering how I'm gonna see what I'm speaking about. So I was just like, I'm gonna have to, I think I need that. I'm gonna need that. I'm a hands talker. This isn't gonna work for me. And then I need my clicker. We're good? We're good? We are good. Yeah. Oh, I feel, let me just put this down. I hired Red Cloud, so we were laughing about, like those stories. Those were wonderful stories, those two opening pieces. And I'm going to have to get adjusted here. I'm just so thankful to be here. Well, I got here at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm trying to, and it's pretty early back in Edmonton right now. That's where I live. So I'm just got to get my game on. I haven't even had my first cup of coffee. So I apologize if I fall down here. And, I'm thankful to be here. I was thinking about Thunder Bay, and I haven't been here for around 3.5 years. And last night I got dropped off at, I was going to try to catch a cab to get out here. And, I just kept on waiting and waiting and waiting. And then I noticed, out of the corner of my eye, a little couple, some elders, and they'd been waiting longer than anybody else. And I started putting 2 and 2 together and started thinking about them. I wonder why they keep on waiting. And I went and talked to them. They're from up north. And they've been waiting for the cab because the cab just kept on driving by them to go to all the other people. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I said, you're going to wait with me. So they waited with me, and I got him in a cab, and the cab reluctantly, and I'm not telling stories to feel bad, but I'm telling the story because it actually hurt me to watch that in real time. And so I waited with them with my fancy little brown jacket, and I got a cab, no problem, but I put them in the cab. And I was just thinking, man, we got to do better. We have to do better. They were here from up north to go to some like medical facility. You folks would know more about than me. So I was just thinking about that, and I made a phone call to the dispatcher and said that shouldn't happen. So I ended up waiting for a long time. I was the last person in the whole airport with security last night, and I got a cab at 1 o'clock in the morning. Roach's cab, and I said, "Is there anything open here?" And they said, "No." But I'm happy to be here, and I just wanted to say that to put that out in the world, that I'm like, we have to be better as human beings, right? It helped me understand a little bit, and I think maybe that's the reason why I'm supposed to be here. I love the folks that were talking already this morning, and I'm like, as you could see just by the way I look, I love going back to my home community, Montreal Lake Cree Nation, and my people. They say, you know what, Sean, what did the city do to you? I said, I know. I said, I've got no skills, man. I can't fish. I can't fill it. I can't hunt, and I can't dance. I don't know what was the creator's purpose for me. So they laugh when I go to the fish derby. And I said, is there like a Tim Hortons here too? And they're like, please. They said, we're going to ban you from the community pretty soon, Sean. I just love to tease my vice chief and the people back there when I go home. And then and I love it. They have I have this pair of burgundy pants I wear out there to my community on purpose. It's like bright burgundy, and I walk out there. When I come from the city, I walk up to my chief. He's like this. Please, really, come on, man. Remember where you are, he said. He goes, I said, what's wrong with burgundy? He goes, just try to blend in, please. Try to blend in. So, yeah. You can't hear? Okay. So, okay. Yeah. So I want to put that context out there. I want to put that context of, my job in Montreal Lake Cree Nation in my home community, as I do research, and I'm a relentless advocate for children. I'm a child advocate there. And then when they talked about the opportunity to speak about, land-based pieces, my job in my life has been to create space so we respect that in a good way. So that's actually like part of what we do. Like it's not an add-on. It's not just something that you do. It's like something rooted in how we want to live our life. So I've been in the bush too. And I spend time I go for a week at a time, and I write in my journal field notes. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share a little bit about what I learned along the way, with some of the actual stories of my life of coming home. And I'm going to open this space up by reading a piece I wrote. I called it Bubbling Up. Through COVID, it was just, I kind of said to myself, okay, Sean, experienced a lot of loss because I was living in Edmonton, and then I couldn't go home when we lost people in my community. I could only go to the border and wave goodbye. And in my life, I studied for 17 years at the university. I'm the first person in my community with a PhD. I spent a lot of time in foster care early in my life, and then eventually got adopted on the free agent waiver wire and got picked up by an agricultural family, a farmer family, unbelievably. So I just was thinking, during some of these pieces, I said, like Sean, like, return to your roots, think about what reawakens you, think about what sustains you when times are difficult. And I always wanted to write some kids' books, not the boring books that put people to sleep. That's what I write mostly in my university life. But I wanted to write something that, kind of filled my heart. So I wrote this piece for my daughter, who I hadn't seen for a very long time. I called it Bubbling Up. And I want you to imagine with me, to think with me, to think with the illustrations. They're making it into like a comic book and a graphic novel for kids. But I think Bubbling Up is something that is connected to this conversation that we're having about land and healing and wellness and kindness and imagination and identity and all these pieces I think that we're here together for today. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so tired, but I'm so happy to be here. It's really a blessing. Bubbling up. Bubbling up like a soda pop fizzing inside of me is how I feel. This feeling's in my stomach always. You see, I want to tell the stories my dad he'd share with me and the stories his mother and grandmother share with him about his home and community. He must really like these stories because he's always talking about them in some way. I want to put my hand up. I want to reach real high and tell my teacher what I know. I want to tell the world how much I know about all these things you share with me, but I can't, even when it's bubbling up inside of me. I go silent. I stay silent always. You see, my dad, he's Woodland Cree. He tells me many stories of his home and the people in his community. I guess as his daughter, this makes me Woodland Cree also. I'm also just learning, still learning, always learning. I go back home to his community with him sometimes, and let me tell you, it's a long ways from the city. We have to travel all day. No cell phones, he says here. I won't tell Dad, it might disappoint him to know that the drive's way too long. When we go back home to the community, we fish together and we walk down the forest trails, and he always wants to hold my hand. It's different here in the community. There are so many trees and water in this forest place. He tells me how happy he is when I come with him here. I believe him when he says that. And I'm not going to tell him that I don't really love fishing, but I'll still give it a try. It's usually just me and my big sister that travel back home with him. I wonder about that. I can see that he's proud when he's with us in his community. He literally and annoyingly introduces us to everyone. First the elders, then vice chief, then chief, and his cousins and his aunties and his family. There are so many people to meet in this place. Everyone's laughing all the time, it seems. It's exhausting here. It bubbles up inside of me, some of these stories he shares with me. Little bubbles inside me start floating from the bottom to the top of my stomach, reaching out in all directions. I think when I imagine them, they're all kinds of colors, mostly bright yellow is my favorite. They're different shapes and sizes, small to large and large to small. They have this way of gently lifting me up inside. Dad says, always be proud of your Woodland Cree roots. The stories are deep inside you. Maybe these stories he speaks of are the bubbles that I'm feeling inside me, wanting me to float, wanting me to take flight in some ways. I don't quite know what it means when he says that to me. I hope someday he solves this riddle for me. But that's my dad always speaking like that. I'm used to it by now. I'm used to him by now. And his ways have never, ever given me the answers I'm looking for. I want to tell my teacher. I want to tell my friends. I want to tell all the stories he shares with me. Even the stories of fishing, I guess, would be okay at this point. At his home, I notice he has beautiful art, buffaloes and nature, bears and colorful circular images all over the walls. My dad writes stories about his home and his community in his journals. He doesn't know this, but I sometimes go through those journals and read them all by myself. I read about the stories of him as a young boy and my little brother and sisters. Dad takes me to so many places to share about his culture, about our culture, our woodland roots, he says. He always says, someday you'll understand more. I wish you'd just hurry up and tell me. Bubbling up, it's like the bubbles filling inside me. I get so excited to try and share some of the stories, but to tell you the truth, I don't think that people will believe me. Some might even laugh, even though I have been to all these places with my dad. You see, I have light brown skin. I have the wildest curly hair, at least that's what my dad calls it. He says it's my superpower. I have brown eyes like him, but they are different. a sort of brown mixed with green. So that makes it different. That makes us different. My eyes are round, his are differently shaped. He says my middle name, Sage, comes from a place of stories. It's funny because I don't even know what that means when he says that, but let me guess, someday I will understand. I sit at my desk and squirm, hoping that no one asks me when we talk about these ideas at school today. I hope no one notices how uncomfortable I am, that my face is starting to turn a little red even when it's not visible. The bubbles rise up faster now, quicker during these times. And then when I go silent and say nothing like I do every time, I can feel the fizz inside of me disappearing. It's at this point that the bubbles begin to no longer float. They slowly lose their shape and become flat and float back slowly down to the pit of my stomach. I'm wondering sometimes if this is where they really belong. At this point, I could start to quietly hear his voice inside of me repeating regularly, to be proud of your woodland roots. At this point, I could feel him holding my hand walking down the woodland trails of our community. At this point, I could remember the sounds of laughter in a different language as he made me meet all those people. I guess they're my people also. I'm just beginning to understand this now. I could see it and remember when I think about the fish, the stories in his journals, and all the places he's trying to show me. Through his art and stories, and the possible many meanings of my middle name, S-A-G-E, Sage. It's bubbling up once again like a soda pop fizzing inside of me. This is how I feel. I want this feeling to be in my stomach always. Tineke, thank you, Dad. Thank you. I don't read that too much, but yeah, that's just a little message about identity, right? I was wondering if you could, like, you know, can you imagine with me and see some of the shapes and some of the colors, and I think you mean the purpose of that piece. Well, I know the purpose of that piece is that I want children to be able to walk 10 feet tall. I think what you're talking about right now is actually the pathway to actually be able to walk 10 feet tall, to have those bubbles fizzing up inside of you and to maintain, not to disappear, not to be ashamed of our names, not to be shared of all the knowledge that they have, all the stories, all the good things, the roots that you put in them, the roots that you put in them. My daughter, I haven't seen for a very long time, for 2 years. And for the past 2 days, we walked for 2 hours every day and we talked about the roots inside. We skipped school, and that's okay. Because I said the most important thing right now, it's not about school, it's about education. And when your body's hurting inside, you're not learning anyways. So let's go for a walk in the trees. I said, let's go talk to some trees. And I said, and then we'll feel better. We'll get regulated, and then I'll send you back to school. Those principals don't like me sometimes, but it makes sense, right? It makes sense. And even, you know, the thing I want to share is that even though sometimes you think that, you know, everything is going good in some ways, it's sometimes their own children that are struggling the most, you know, our own children, my own daughter, who's right now struggling with her mental health. So I'm so happy that I'm here to share this with you, because I'm trying to think about ways forward too. And it's, it doesn't disguise and it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter, you know, our wellness matters with all children. That's the work I do. Currently, I want to give you some just context. I just wrote down some, like, I am like a speaker like this, but I'm going to give you like just some things that I have learned along the way. I'm just going to read it straight off. I'm going to get this out of the way and we could talk about it after. Deal? Okay. And then I'm going to tell some stories. So in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, where I'm from, it's northern Saskatchewan, we're Woodland Cree. We're a small community. We're a community that got ravaged by fires, and the forest fires created a different type of monster in our community. And that monster created opportunities for more alcohol and for crystal meth in particular, to converge on our community in such difficult ways. Crystal meth being pushed on even elementary children. And I've been living in Edmonton for a long time. I'm a professor at the university. This is my 11th year as a professor at the University of Alberta. My background's in educational psychology and teacher education. And my chief and my vice chief said, Sean, you need to please come home. And so this is 4 years ago now. And I said I could come home in some ways. And so I tried to get back there every other week to come home and to try to start something. And so by talking to community, of course, I said, you know, you could get as many mental health therapists as you want, but if you don't combine that with something else, the gifts that you already have, the gifts that I don't have, and they're like, talk normal, Sean. What do you mean? You have gifts and knowledge on the land, with the land. It's like sacred ecology. It's the best gift that no one could take away. I said, that's your healer. That's Muskwa. I said, so let us concentrate our pathway on like making sure that we're getting kids outside in any way, shape, or form. But we can't call it land-based because that's a government term. You're going to come up with your own name from your own community, you know? So we, that was the beginning pathway. That was the beginning start. Overwhelming. And sometimes you win a little bit, you feel like, and then it goes backwards. And then sometimes you're really flying and then you get hit with something else. We've lost some young people, struggles, but so many wins. So I just wrote these little pieces and I'm going to get to this. The things I've learned along the way are that you start small, but start. You know what that means when I say that? Is that when we're in schools or when we're trying to do these pieces, we try to like hit this monster home run like Jose Bautista, but it doesn't work that way, that we have to start small, but start to keep it going. Because it's overwhelming energy and it takes more than one person to actually make this fly, to sustain it. You mean to sustain a community approach to actually trying to do this. I talked about with my community and they just shake their head. I said, can we talk about the importance of sacred ecology or ethical relationality? And they're saying, can you talk normal, please, Lassard? I said, well, the only way to actually hit holism or the whole body is actually by getting outside, by engaging the land. You mean you talk about holistic education all the time, but the actually only possible way is actually to connect it to the land. That's the only possible way. We can't talk about it in the classroom. You actually physically have to go outside to get there, to get to the sacred ecology, the places that matter. Do you know what I mean? Right now, the other community that I spend a lot of time with right now is James Smith First Nation. I think you've all read about James Smith in the news, and my job in James Smith right now is to try to help children who are scared to go back to school to come back to school gently. And my only pathway to do that after that tragedy is to like walk alongside them by slowly getting the people from the community to hold their hand and to walk outside and to not think about school in classes. What else have I learned along the way? I've learned that land-based education is not like having s'mores and wiener roast. So I used to come back home and I love Montreal Lake. We're filled with so much, and I love s'mores and wiener roast. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I love it. So I'd go back to my community. I'd spend some time and I'm like, hey, Lassard, we're having another s'mores and wiener roast day. I'm like, that can't be land-based education because I can do that, man. I said, give me something more. I said, we have to push ourselves. Like we have to push ourselves. So one of the things that we're challenged that I've learned along the way is that how these land-based experiences mesh or don't mesh with school curriculum. So one of the things I did with communities, with Enoch Cree Nation, where I met Red Cloud, where I hired Red Cloud, is I sat with young people. I sat with a gigantic group of single mothers because they had a keen sense of what they wanted for their children. Sat with elders and knowledge keepers, and we wrote a curriculum with them. And we did it to make the Alberta government very angry. We wrote it first in Cree syllabics. Then secondly, we wrote it in Cree. And then lastly, we wrote it in English. And I handed it to the Alberta government and they kind of swore at me in a different way. They said, what is this? What are these designs? I said, that's called syllabics. That's an ancient language, sir. Jason Kenney doesn't like me back there. But the reason why we did that, the reason why I'm sharing this like in this kind of way is that we needed some kind of fence post or some kind of guide to help us along the way. So we actually built it from pre-K all the way to adult. it helped us. It didn't like box us in, but it gave us a little bit of guide. And I guess the reason why I'm trying to say this, the things I learned along the way, is that I wanted to privilege how important this was. So I wanted to write some of these things down on paper to show how important it was to school systems, to school boards, to people, to principals, to teachers, to superintendents. So these are some of the things I learned along the way. I learned this is that the most difficult, challenge for some of these programming was actually to get teachers outside. It wasn't about the children. It wasn't about the energies. It wasn't about the programming. It wasn't about the equipment. Is that a lot of the teachers did not want to go outside. And I'm not knocking teachers, but teachers love routine. They love structure. They love the schedule. And the one thing that we know that from some of the research and from actually some of the experiences is that you have to disrupt all that. You have to take all that away to actually make it fly in a good way. One of the things that I'm seeing in different places across Canada is that we're like burning out land-based folks fast. Is that we schedule them a full 100% schedule with no breaks because they should be treated like teachers. And one of the things that we're learning practically along the way is that you have to give space, because when you map it out to think about the time in the prep, you're talking about geese. Just think about the time in the prep that we give other subjects, but we don't give land-based teachers that same kind of prep and opportunity to actually connect, to go guide, to go figure out what they need for resources and material equipment. So we have to like table it different. We have to think about it differently in schools. We have to think about it in terms of sacred knowledge. We can't just timetable people 6 for 6 and expect them to do good things with kids. It's like, it's not purposeful, and it's actually not going to sustain the program. It's not going to sustain the person. So my last couple points here in this, and then I'm out of here on this, and we're just going to start telling stories. So if we have hockey academies that are privileged in all these different ways, or maybe even an art academy, like why can't we have like a land-based academy? So these are the things that we have to advocate for. So I actually say to teachers and principals, I said, so you're going to pay for what you get. So when I look at Jordan's principle on how much they offer to pay knowledge keepers and land-based folks, it's like minuscule. It's like pennies in comparison. So I know the federal government doesn't get it. And I know actually that schools don't get it. They said, okay, well, they're not teachers. I said, yeah, they're PhDs on the land. They actually are. So I said, we need to actually pay them and acknowledge them and honor them that way. So in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, the land-based folks, I pay them more than teachers. I have 4 of them that are working, 2 females and 2 males, by the way, because I think the gendered piece is like so important in that we're getting to such a different place with our girls. And let's face it, as men are not going to help them get where they need to get. So we have 2 females, 2 males, and they're paid more than teachers. You know how mad teachers are at me right now? Yeah. So I said, but you're not thinking about what they're bringing, right? It's if this is going to be actually what we say we're going to do, if it's actually going to be what we're rooted in, if it's actually going to be something we believe truly in, then we should do it, right? We shouldn't just talk about it and say, okay, I'll pay them a little bit over minimum wage and let them use their truck and burn their truck out and let them use their equipment, their own equipment, and not supply it and say, hey, this is good. We got a land-based program. That is not sustainable. That's what I've learned along the way. So slowly but surely, in my community, we're getting some small wins. Our attendance is up. Our major incidents and behavior is down. I know that not only at the school, but with the RCMP. Our kids are active in all kinds of ways. And I want to express this, that when I think about on the land or with the land in relation to the land, that's why I buy bikes. So you invited me down here. I'm going to take that check and I'm going to buy kids bikes. So I started thinking about this, and this is how naive I am, friends. I thought, okay, I think most of the kids in my community have bikes. And so going home more, having conversations with the young people, I found out that over 60% of the kids didn't have bikes in my community. So what a naive thing. I thought that just kids had bikes. Don't you think that every kid should have a bike? So something so small, I said, okay, so then I'm going to do speeches and I'm going to go buy kids bikes. So what we did working with Spirit North is I bought every kid a bike in a community and a helmet, by the way, thank you, and a helmet. But guess what? When I come home, I see the helmets in the ditch all the time. They said, Lessard, what? I'm like, geez, you guys, please, even for a photo, can you please wear a helmet, please? Just please. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. But I thought to myself is that every kid should be able to get on a bike and bike to another place in their imagination. So every kid has a bike. That is like the best gift that I think I could ever brought back to my community. And kids are biking all over the place. So when I just, the thing I'm saying this in this last little bit is that let's push ourselves on what being out on the land could look like, or being alongside the land. We also bought 20 paddle boards. I've never paddleboarded in my life, but we have kids now that are connected to water and safety. They're on the water all the time, except when it's winter. So these are some of the things I'm thinking about. I'm going to put that aside so we can have another conversation, and I'm going to get on with this piece. I wanted to give you something pragmatic that I've been thinking about, but I didn't want it to like tie me down when I'm speaking. Are you ready? Let's do this. Let's see if I can figure out a clicker. The 6 seasons of Woodland Cree youth. And I call it a radical love story. My job is like a child advocate of, I work right now with 15 different First Nations, but Montreal Lake is my home place. Montreal Lake, this is a speech I just did in Toronto. I apologize that I didn't get to shorten it for Thunder Bay, but I'm a long ways from Montreal Lake right now. But I'm going to go back home again soon. I like thinking about the 6 seasons, you know, when I spend time with Montreal Lake, you know, always in my city way, I was thinking about 4 seasons, and my people said, hey, Sean, you forgot 2 seasons. The most important seasons are the transitional seasons, break up and when it starts to freeze. So it's actually the transition. That's actually when the best teachings are. So in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, we go to school right through into July, right? And beginnings of August. So we're going through the whole school year. So we're in relationship to the land through the full year. We don't stop education. We look for pockets and opportunities because some of the best teachings are during those summertime, and that's when school's out. So we were missing so much. Okay, here we go. So I'm a Settee and a Kingfisher in this home place. So I'm thinking about my early beginnings. I started off in Montreal Lake Cree Nation. My mom had some addiction issues and some mental health issues. So I would spend time at home, and then I'd go into foster care, and then I'd go back to Montreal Lake, and then my mom would have a little bit of struggle, and then I'd go to another foster care. And then finally I got picked up on the free agent waiver wire, like some of the Winnipeg Jets. I ended up going to a farm family outside of North Battleford, Saskatchewan, on a farm, a rural place. And they were a foster family that, you know, they said, okay, come here for a while, get stable or whatever. I was little, and then I just kept on staying. And then they finally said, like, keep your backpack here, keep your stuff here. And then over time, they ended up adopting me, and that's where my last name Lessard is. But back home, I'm a Kingfisher and a Settee, you know, a different name with a different story. But I grew up in this rural North Battleford, Saskatchewan, surrounded by many awesome communities in Saskatchewan. And my mom, I'm thinking about my mom right now, and I'm thinking about like some of those coming home stories to Montreal Lake Cree Nation. My adopted mom, businesswoman. When she says 5 o'clock supper, she means 5 o'clock supper. When it's 7 o'clock breakfast, it's 7 o'clock breakfast. When she had like tight rules and ran a very tight ship. My dad, so he thought, you know what, we'll get this kid, this boy, because maybe he'll take over the family farm. And my dad was going to be, so he wanted to pass on the family farm to a boy, and they couldn't have a boy. So they picked me, but they picked the wrong kid. That's for sure. My dad, I remember when we'd be out in the farm, I was around 120 pounds, and I'd walk out there with a muscle shirt and a pair of flip-flops. And my dad would be like, can you please go back outside? You're embarrassing the neighbors. And I said, well, Dad, can I help out? He said, please don't. Just go back outside. So I tried to help my dad, and it just wasn't working for I always say to him, I said, I just don't understand this farming thing. Like you drive around in circles and just throw stuff in the air and like hope it plants and grows. He goes, that is so disrespectful. I remember my dad saying. My mom, tight ship, tight ship, 5 o'clock supper kind of woman, strong, loud woman. My dad, a very, very quiet, mild-mannered man. So in grade 12, I remember sitting there and at the kitchen, having supper, getting ready for the family dinner. And my mom saying, Sean, so what's your plan? It's grade 12, it's mid-year. I want to know what your plan is next year. I said, well, it's easy, Mom. I'm going to play hockey a little bit more. I'm going to maybe I'm going to take this year off. Me and my girlfriend, our relationship's really blossoming. We're going to spend more time together. That's one thing we're going to do. And I just want to just have this year just to think about life. So my mom looked at me and said this. So every single one of the things that you said you're going to do, you're not doing. None of them. She goes, you're not doing one of those things. So you're not spending more time to reflect on your life. You're not spending more time to blossom your relationship with your girlfriend, and you're not playing more hockey. I said, don't I have I'm 17. I'm like, don't I have a say on what I want to do? She goes, no, what you're going to do is, and then she, like a ninja in the secret cupboard, which I didn't know existed, she goes in there and pulls out 15 to 20 college books. And she says, you know what you're going to do? By 9 o'clock tonight, you're going to pick a college. And she goes, you're going to go to college next year. And the only other rule of this is that it's got to be 100 kilometers away from this house. And so I'm just thinking about that, fast, right in front of the family. And my dad is my go-to guy. Hey, he just drops his head and goes like this. Hey, doesn't say anything. He just nods in agreement. And I said, okay, so let me get this again. So there's a college 20 minutes away, 15, maybe 20 minutes away from where we live. She goes, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to say. It has to be 100 kilometers away from here. I said, are you kicking me out of the house? No, I'm gently asking you to leave. So I think my mom would have been the best college guidance counselor in the world. And I'm so this is a serious thing. You guys are this, we're not joking around right now. She goes, no, I'm very serious about what's happening here. So supper was over, and she made my favorite meal to soften me up. Hey, my favorite homemade meal. I can still remember this. And I everybody leaves, the kitchen's clear, and I'm just sitting with all these books. And I'm like, how do you pick a college, man? I don't even know I have no skills. I have no outdoor skills. I don't have any people skills. I have relationship issues. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I went through those books, one by one. And for some strange reason, I found this college called Lakeland College. And there's this program called Rehabilitation Services / Youth Work. And I'm like, hey, maybe I could be good working with kids. Maybe I have skills at that. I don't really know, but I think maybe this is something I could do. So I looked at it and I was like, okay, I think I could do this. And then one of the things that you had to do is you had to write a college essay. You had to go get some practical experience, volunteering, and then write an essay to say what the experience was like. So I looked in a phone book and I found this wonderful sheltered workshop. And so I got my mom to drop me off on a Saturday, and I was going to just take some notes. 17 years old. It was a sheltered workshop for adults who have cognitive impairment or physical disabilities. And so I sat there, walked through the doors, and sat in fear, and just wrote and tried to pay attention to what was going on. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Spent my time there. And I said, Mom, I think I got to go back again because I don't really know what I'm supposed to write about. So I went back the next Saturday and I started to help out a little bit. And then I went back the next Saturday and the next Saturday, and the next Saturday. And then I finally wrote a college essay on this experience of working with adults with impairment or disability at that time. So I handed in my my essay, I handed in my application to Lakeland College. I got a phone call back. So I just want to give some background context too. My average was 54% at that time. I had a 50% in physical education and I went every single day. That's hard to do. Like, how do you go every single day and still have a 50%? I'm like, question that. So I handed in my report card, my marks, my transcripts are 54%. And I handed this into Lakeland College, which obviously doesn't meet the entrance requirements. And they phoned me back and said, can you come down for an interview? We got a couple questions. So I went down for an interview to Lakeland College and they asked me, do you have a cognitive impairment? I'm like, what? Like I said, like what? I said, like, did you, like, we're not sure what's going on here. So did you just ask if I had a cognitive impairment? I'm like, I don't understand. They're like, yeah, because like, did you write your essay? Because your marks in school are horrible, but this essay is wonderful. So did you write it? And do you have cognitive impairment? I said, why do you keep on asking me that? Because it's not, you said, because it's not measuring up. It's not making sense. They're going to make me, they made me do a test on my cognition to see if I had the ability, and I nailed this test. But the funny thing along the way is, I mean, I got accepted into Lakeland College, and it was the most, you know, beautiful opportunity. My mom was so happy she could kick me out of the house without, you know, really gently kick me out of the house. I went to college as the first person in my adopted family and in my community family to go to college, 17 years old. I entered this first day of that class in rehabilitation services youth worker, and I was the only guy in that class. I was surrounded by middle-aged, beautiful aunties that were very serious about their studies. They did not mess around with their studies. So I'd walk in there, 17 years old with my volleyball jacket. By the way, I go in there like this and they're like, you know, sit down, don't talk, listen. We're here for studies, not for like messing around. So I sat there quietly and learned from 35 aunties, and they became my best friends in that course. And I learned when to be quiet, and I learned when to laugh and when not to laugh. And they were very serious about their studies. I was the class valedictorian at the end of my studies. 19 years old, I graduate from that class as the class valedictorian in rehabilitation and youth services. When I first went there, I had no job. And you're going to say like, okay, what does this even have to do with land-based education? It has everything to do with me going home to try to find a space to be a relentless advocate for children, a relentless advocate for youth in Canada. And I think the only way we get there is by going back outside. That's why I'm here. It's a pathway to healing our whole bodies. So I remember going there and not having a job. And so many people assume that because you're First Nation, that your band's paying for you. That didn't work that way. I ended up making the volleyball team. I was the first First Nations volleyball player on a scholarship there at Lakeland College. So I had some skills somewhere, I suppose. But I also needed a job to actually pay for my rent in my apartment. So I looked up in the newspaper and there was a job to work with a young man in recreation. So I went and met his family. His name was Jeremy. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't talk. My job every day was to get him ready for school, and every single night to tuck him into bed and to get him ready for bed. The other times I was supposed to do recreation to get him outside, to get his body full, to try to give him experiences that he wouldn't have. He was confined to a wheelchair and he couldn't talk. The reason why I'm saying this is because Jeremy was my best teacher. So he taught me at a very beginning stage of my life at 17 years old, is that you know when a child is happy. You know when a child is sad. You know when a child has fear in their body. And he taught me this because he couldn't speak. But if you understand what I'm talking about, and I know so many of you do, that you could feel it off their bones. So my job as a 17 years old was to get them outside as much as possible, to try to understand them. You know, we would laugh. I'd be talking to myself, saying stories. People thought I was just weird walking around parks, just talking to myself because he couldn't speak. But he was my best teacher. He taught me to be a youth worker, to be a child listener, you know, from 17 to 19 years old. I graduated that year at 19. And I remember like getting on the phone and phoning home, being so proud to talk to my dad, my adopted dad. I phone him with change in a payphone, change. And I'm like, hey, Dad, like I graduated. He goes, that is good, son. And my dad didn't say much at all. He goes, okay, now the plan is going to come. You're going to come back home to the farm and we're going to take over the farm. I want you to take this more seriously now. It's our family farm. It's in our name. I said, Dad, it's too late. I said, like, I'm selling fruit in the side of the road. I hitchhiked to BC. I said, I'm like selling fruit in the side of the road right now. And then all of a sudden, like the phone just went dead. And I'm like, okay, I'll go get some more change, which is a painful thing to do. I found more change. I said, Dad, we got like disconnected. No, I hung up on you. He goes, so you're the first person in our family. My dad had a grade 6 education, my farmer dad. He goes, I'm so happy you're taking home the farm. You got a college education. I'm so proud of you. Your grandma would be so proud of you. And you just told me you're selling fruit on the side of the road. Yeah, Dad, it's the best job ever. It is the best job ever. I am meeting so many people around the world. I get to meet girls every single day from all around the world, Dad. And I'm like selling fruit, apples, oranges, and everything. And it's amazing. And then the other job I have is I pump gas at Petro-Canada at night. Unbelievable, he says. That's what you're doing with your education. Yeah, it's a great job, Dad. It's the best job. I'm learning so much. I actually happened to put an application in before I left in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, to a program, you know, to work with youth in some capacity. Late August, I got a phone call from a woman, not a girlfriend, a woman, a boss. And she said, like, would you like to come down for an interview in Saskatoon? I think there's a job available for you in a school. So I hitchhiked, never hitchhiked. That was young. I was young and naive. I hitchhiked back to Saskatoon, went down Broadway, and I looked for a school called the Main Street Program School. And all I seen was like this little brick, like this little brick building in on the street. And that was the school. It was called the Main Street Program. And it was a school where kids who are kicked out of every single school come to the school to get healthy, to get well again, so we can get them back to another type of school. And in this place, I open up the door. I seen a woman there sitting on a vintage green couch. And I'll say this, 1,234.62, 1,234.62. 1,234.62 was how much every paycheck was at the end of the month. I've kept every single stub from my job at the Main Street Program. The woman's name was Laurel. She was a teacher. She had a master's in education and she worked with kids in trauma. She interviewed me and she talked to me about every single thing about kids, but not school. She gave me my first job working with kids when I was 19 years old at the Main Street Program. Laurel was the kind of teacher who said, never look at a child directly. Always think about what they might be missing. Don't ever respond or react to their anger because they're just missing something. Teach with kindness and gentleness. I worked with Laurel for 2 years. She was the most amazing teacher to me. This is before reconciliation. And in the second year, she said, Sean, you can't work here no more. I said, I want this job to be my job for the rest of my life. I'm a youth worker. This is what my calling is. This is what I'm supposed to do. She said, you need to go back and be a teacher, Sean. You need to go back a teacher. You need to do this. You need to go to the university. And I said, people like me don't go to university. That's for smart kids. And she said, Sean, people like you do go to university. She goes, what we're going to do this year is this. I'm going to take you to university once a week. I'm going to take you to a coffee shop. We're going to have tea. We're going to go sit and listen to different types of music that you're not used to. You're going to sit in classes. You're going to spend time with me in a library. We're going to walk all around this campus and you're going to know it so well by the start of next fall that you'll be able to like walk through it. So this woman, non-Indigenous person, teacher, what she said she was going to do is what she did. She took me every single week to the University of Saskatchewan and took me to different experiences to try to actually provoke my imagination, to believe that you mean I could do something different or I can walk differently in a different place. We went to some weird places, some places that made me very uncomfortable. I went to my first symphony with her and I didn't know what was going on, but I stayed. I drank different types of coffee and teas and sat in different times of lectures. I talked about feminism and sat there just as an observer. The reason why I'm telling you this story is because every single thing I do in my life is connected to actually back to that early teaching. I say to kids who I spend with every single week is that we need to learn to walk 10 feet tall. And the reason why I'm saying that is I also write about this piece is that I wrote this really crazy story called Walking Through Oranges. And I said, so if a kid or a child has never smelled an orange or never tasted an orange or felt an orange in a different way or had those experiences, how are they supposed to imagine it? How are they supposed to actualize it? How are you supposed to be able to walk 10 feet tall if you don't have these different experiences to provoke your imagination, to do something different, to be something different? I think connected to that is exactly what you folks are doing when you walk with kids in the trees, when you walk alongside them through different experiences, is because what you're doing is provoking imagination to imagine something otherwise. You're also provoking those stories around identity that help a person to be able to walk 10 feet tall, to sustain their story, to imagine something different. So I went to the U of S in the Indian teacher education program, and I was on the honor roll, and I learned that I loved reading. I didn't know I loved reading. They couldn't keep me out of the library in those places. It became, one of those stories that's sustaining. Fast forward. At 17 years old, I was farming with my dad. Well, kind of farming, really bad farming. And I was like, said to my dad, I said, Dad, you know what I want to really do? I want to learn about like my home. Like I'm something missing in me, Dad. I want to go home. I want to go home to my community. Can you help me with this? And he's like, okay, there's this, he goes, I'll take you to the safe. And he goes, there's papers in there. And he goes, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to read some things that it's going to be very difficult for you to read. But he goes, if this is important to you, then this is what we're going to do. So my dad handed me these papers, my adoption papers. And I opened it and read it. And it said Montreal Lake on there. So I said, okay, well, I got to go to Montreal Lake. I was 17 years old. So I said, Dad, can I borrow your truck that week? And he said, okay. And he goes, what are you going to do? I'm going to go home. So at 17 years old, I took those papers and I drove from North Battleford, Saskatchewan to Montreal Lake Cree Nation, a place I had no idea where it was. And I drove straight to Montreal Lake and right up to the band office and hopped out of that truck. And can you imagine me walking up, the band office? People were just like this. And I walked into the band office and I said, hi, my name's Sean Lessard. And the lady's like, so? Yes, so how can I help you? Can you imagine in the band office, right? You know exactly the experience. I'm like, yeah, my name's Sean Lessard. So? Yeah, but like, this is my home. No, it's not. Yeah, like this is my home. It says right here, Montreal Lake on this paper. Like, so what do you want me to do with that? This lady's saying, I remember saying, and there was a man in the band office that overheard this. His name is Glenn Halkett. He goes, you're Sean. I'm like, yeah, my name's Sean. He goes, you are home. He goes, your mom's been looking for you. Your sisters have been looking for you. Your grandfather's still alive. He goes, he's sick right now. He goes, we've been waiting for you to come home all this time. Welcome home, son. So Glenn took me and we just walked along the beach and we walked through the community that day. And he told me stories about like coming home. walking through the trees. And then we set up a next meeting where I was going to be able to meet my mom. And this is how, like, I mean, the white world changed me. Hey, so I'm going to meet my mom and some of the family, they said. So I'm so shocked. Like, I'm excited. Like, it's something like maybe like want to see it of a movie that you imagine up in your life, right? And so I talked to my mom on the phone, or my mom passed around 5 years ago, late Gladys, my mom. She said, okay, we're going to meet at bingo. And so in my white brain that I've learned in this other place, I'm like, bingo? Like I'm thinking like we're gonna have like a like this, like just a big showcase, open it up, and then she's like, yeah, no, I'll meet you at bingo. We'll see you there. I said, well, Mom, I don't even know what you look like. Oh, we'll find you. So I went to Prince Albert to meet my mom and my family, and I picked up a 6-pack of donuts. That was mistake number one. Because she said, you're gonna meet your family. So I showed up to bingo, and there's like 55 to 60 people there, my family, my half brothers, my sisters, and I handed them this like 6-pack of donuts. And they knew it was me as soon as I walked in. And I was 17 years old when I first started going home. I'm 48 years old right now. I've been going home physically and metaphorically since I was 17 years old. And it's that's what I want for kids. That's what I want for them to be able to do. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. I'll go through a couple quick slides. And it's more like a video essay of the 6 seasons of Woodland Cree Youth. I always say I write with journals, and I journal every single day. So these PowerPoints are like 17 years of writing. I journal every single day. And when I'm in the field, I write even like one small note every day. And if I can't get to my journal, I talk it to my phone into my voice memos, and then I write it out after. And I always start with on the line, the long winding road, going back to a place I know. It's a small piece I write, how I transitioned from the city to the trees, and how it takes me like 1 or 2 days to untangle my body, because my body is like so busy and buzzing. It takes me 2 days to get a little bit more grounded. It helps me understand what kids are going through, especially with phones. This is just some of the things that we're doing with kids. We have classrooms for every class in the trees that the kids designed. So every single class has designed like an engineer their ideal, beautiful, special healing place in the trees. The kids design it, and then they create it with the community. Some of them are so amazing with like crystals and glass and little like chimes. This is all children made. We're talking kindergarten right now with the help of like families. One of the most important pieces that I help design and promote and engage with and write for and advocate for is for children in care. My job right now is I'm writing Bill C-92 legislation to bring our kids home in a woodland sense in Saskatchewan. So I've been researching and writing in every part of my life to bring kids home in a good way, back to home. The way we first connect with home when kids are in care is by going outside. We've built cabins on the lake so families can get to know their children through the land. That's the first point of contact, not in an office. So every single thing is, these are kids that have just come home for the first time to meet their family. So I guess the reason why I was telling you those early stories about me is because what I'm doing in my life is actually manifesting itself in this other way. We all have different gifts. I'm not good on the land. I'm not skilled in that, but I'll try my hardest. Right. And I know, I guess what the creator maybe put me here for is I'm supposed to be a translator for my people, because I have all these beautiful, like knowledge holders, but they don't know how to write it down in the white way. So I kind of write it down in a little bit of a white way, but not too white. You know what I mean? Because some of it shouldn't be written down, I think. I just enjoy this transformative experience as I undo myself from the city and the urban landscape. and begin to reconnect with this meaningful place. So the beautiful part about it is that kids just laugh. They said, Lessard, you're so bad at this. I said, it is. I am so bad. But kindergarten kids, you know, being able to show me different ways to work with the land, to think with the land, to be in relationship to the land. I'm a relentless advocate. So when principals try to take this out of the school, like I put it more into schools. Okay. Because it's not an add-on, it's actually a through line philosophical. It is our roots. So we have to take it up that way. It's not an add-on. It's not a wiener roast. This is actually a way of living, a way of healing, a way of engaging, a way forward. This is back home. And sometimes silence is just good. I recall Grandpa Jim holding my hand. He put his hand on my face. He spoke Cree, barely audible, to my sister. So I got to meet my grandfather for a very short time before he passed. My grandfather, Jim Satie, was a firekeeper. He was a relentless advocate for the community. He was a person that brought people together. He actually thought at the end of his life that there should be many ways to healing. And so he became the oldest ordained Anglican minister at 86 years old. But he also practiced a traditional medicine and he lived off the land. So he said somewhere, some way, you know, his last work was putting into syllabics some of the hymns. He was a very beautiful man. You're at home. You all know this. Before farms and settlements, before the busyness of towns and cities, there's stories. There's a geography in all our story. That's what I talk with two kids about all the time. So when we think about land-based, you know, sometimes we think about just hunting, maybe and fishing. So we have hockey, we have biking classes, BMX classes, paddleboarding classes, hiking classes, every single thing you can imagine that kids want to do. That's how we're looking at land. A paddleboard class for kids, water safety, safety always with every single thing we do. Really, that's a very important piece. We have outdoor rinks all over the place, so kids have an opportunity to skate. We have equipment. I mean, sometimes we think about like, oh, kids should be able to just to go outside. They actually don't have access. I bought a pontoon boat for my community this year. And they said, like, Lessard, why a pontoon boat? Let's just have some cruises, man. Let's just enjoy life, eh? So my chief just laughs. He goes like, what, you're just going to cruise around the harbor? I don't know how to drive it, but let's just do it. Let's get kids and elders and people out connect to the land because they don't have access, even though the water's right there. So I bought a whole bunch of boats, a number of boats. That makes me cold. Earliest memories stay with me in the person are called forth through the sprinkles of snow, ice forming, sliding sounds of children laughing. So in relationship to the land can look all kinds of different ways if we let our imagination go there. We have a rink. Try to use it all seasons. I get kids to journal. They just think it's so weird when I go out there, but I go every week. I volunteer in a different school, a high school, a junior high, and then an elementary. I do that in the city. So I volunteer every Friday of my life to go work with kids, and we're always journaling and we're always walking with the trees. Our land-based classes are now, we no longer have Cree separate. Cree is right alongside the land-based programming. You know, it's going to work better, right? Because if you try to teach anything and you just start with the brain and end with the brain and don't think about the whole body, it won't go in the body. But if you start with the body, it will get to the brain because your body's open. Our language is taken on all kinds of different ways because we're outside teaching it. We don't teach it off carts anymore. It's alongside one another. You can't stay, you must keep going, keep going. What I saw was limited by imagination of what was possible in my life. Keep going in this work. Keep provoking imagination. And we know that the outdoor spaces are actually going to be a way forward to provoke that imagination. Do you believe me? And then sometimes we travel to experiences where we go from Montreal Lake Cree Nation and we take kids outside their comfort zone who've never been even to Edmonton. I take them to the mountains and we go walk to the mountains to reconnect to ancestors, to reconnect to ourselves, to stay in a hotel for the first time. Yeah. And we're always geared up with swag, connected to experience, connected not just to university. If you're going to be the best mechanic, I'm going to connect you to the best mechanic, and we're going to imagine that all the way forward. You're going to take over this land-based program. Let's connect you in a mentored approach with kids right now to actually learn from this. And it counts. So we have young people, young men that are actually really taking this up and kind of like an Oscapio model, but it's our young women that are flying. People say they wouldn't like to hunt. They're showing something very different in that. This is not gendered. Strong females. Of course, the art becomes alive because we can use all these pieces to create too with our imagination. Young people from my community, all in foster care, but we all care about them. That's what we said. We don't start with foster care. We don't talk that way, I said. And then we take them to experiences. The kids design their own t-shirts, always bright pink. This is what I'm supposed to wear. The kids said this is from Montreal Lake. Yeah. I take them to schools, to experiences, to high schools, to sit with other people, to try different things, to taste different foods. You know, we transform ourselves from the community to the city, from the city back to the community. And now the city kids come back to the community and our kids are teachers in the community. Do you know how much that changes them? Because they're the leaders now. We just flip the script. Spending time in class together. My grandfather was a trapper, a guide and hunter. He's also a fire spotter, an advocate for our Woodland Creek community and throughout the north. I'm my grandfather's son. This is what I get kids to write all the time. This is what we wear on our t-shirts. I know I am Woodland Cree. Walk 10 feet tall. I am proud who I am. Those are our t-shirts that kids make. And we mostly do it in the language. And when we go to the city, we walk with these all the time. We have trails through the trees. All the trails, cross country. We have cross country programming too. And snowshoeing. And the kids have all renamed the trails, groomed the trails, and it's in our language. They've named the trails themselves. They look after the trails themselves. It changes it. I'm surrounded by the comfort of pine trees. These are kids' notes. And then sometimes we just play volleyball in the mountains or soccer. We went to a youth conference and the kids said, we don't want to listen to any of that. Let's just play. So we played, we set up our own volleyball net and played soccer in the winter. Transforming experiences. That's what you folks are doing. Outside playing soccer and skipping school. We skipped the conference and went outside. Small things. Start small, but start. You would recognize this. I think with the importance of going back home to my community in the spring when the ice breaks up on the lake and the water starts to flow in the many channels into the place that I have come to know, that is the Rapids. So back home, there's a place called the Rapids where the walleye run, where we meet every year. That's where we go with our kids to reground ourselves. That is the educated space. We don't talk about school, we talk about education. No one could take that away. Those stories. He paid particular attention to the moss. The moss moves differently and how it's marked by the imprints of humans and animals. My grandpa was a tracker and a guide, and he found many lost children in the forest. And there's a story that they wrote about called The Lost Boy, about a little boy he found in the forest. And then how he walked in with silence, and all he did was pay attention to the actual moss markings. And he found a little boy that had been lost for 2 days. And he said that he almost walked over him, but he could tell the difference between animals and where humans walked. And he says this all in Cree in one of the stories he shares, and he almost walked over him. And the boy was so scared that he couldn't talk. And so he just took the boy in his arms and he held him. And then he walked him out to the people. And I guess the metaphor and the teaching of the story is that, that there's always a way home, and that there are many lost boys. And so it's kind of one of the ways that we try to think about stories in the community, keep us grounded, to keep us going, that there are many lost boys and lost girls. On the road, the long, narrow road, I'm going back to the place where the waters flow. That's what I want you to think with today. That's what I want us to imagine, the possibilities of what we can do alongside the land in relationship to the land. Canoes for all our classes, kayaks for all our classes. Sometimes it's just playing together soccer. Sometimes it's creating our trails. Sometimes it's running into an elk on the golf course. We have golf programming for all our kids too. Everything about outside. Relentless advocacy. We will find a way. Don't worry about money. We will find a way. Playing baseball. So many kids have forgot how to play baseball. It's sad to me. A young man who lost his mother. We spent time get to each other on a daily basis. My listserv of kids to talk and send a positive message is like in the hundreds per day. That's what I do. Just send one positive message. One positive message. And then you imagine something different. They're wearing Lakeland College pieces. I'm on the board of directors for Lakeland College. Right now I have like 3 scholarships I fund, 2 for single mothers, First Nation mothers or Métis mothers that go to post-secondary, and 1 for Indigenous athletes at the University of Alberta called the Dr. Sean Lassard Scholarship. Mitho Waska Waywin, moving well. That's what I call it. Moving well in relationship, moving well together. The stories are always in movement. Start with the story, end with the story. I sit at my desk and squirm, hoping that no one asks me when we talk about these ideas at school today. I hope no one notices how uncomfortable I am and that my face is starting to turn a little red even when it's not visible. The bubbles rise up faster, quicker during these times. And then when I go silent and say nothing like I do every time, I can feel the fizz inside of me disappearing. It's at this point that the bubbles begin to no longer float. They slowly lose their shape and become flat and float back slowly down to the pit of my stomach. I'm wondering sometimes if this is where they belong. But at this point, I could start to quietly hear his voice inside of me, repeating regularly to be proud of your woodland roots. At this point, I could feel him holding my hand, walking down the woodland trails of our community. At this point, I can remember the sounds of laughter in a different language as he made me meet all those people. I guess they're my people also. I'm just beginning to understand this now. I could see it and remember it when I think about the fish, the stories in his journals, and all the places he's trying to show me. Through his art and stories, in the possible many meanings of my middle name, S-A-G-E, Sage. It's bubbling up once again like a soda pop fizzing inside of me. It is how I feel. I want this feeling to be in my stomach always. Tiniki, thank you for today.